This is the MIAA Weekly.
And welcome. I am Brandon Meisner. Thank you for joining us on this episode of MIAA Weekly. So what is on tap? Well, we will talk about Central Missouri's big win over Emporia State. We will also wrap up the rest of the MIAA games. As you know, 10 regionally ranked teams were released on Monday, but they were in alphabetical order. So were they really regionally ranked? But nonetheless, that's the top 10 teams. What's changed since our last discussion we had a week ago about how we thought they would play out? We'll find that out later. And finally, we'll also predict the outcomes of the games coming up this weekend. You know, everybody kind of agreed that it was the game of the week, and we called it the game of the week. But Emporia State's visit to Central Missouri probably is more accurately described as a coming out party for the Mules. Let's look at some highlights of the game. So the game is already 7-0 Central Missouri, and then the Mules were able to score there and take a 14-0 lead on a 3-yard run. Emporia answers, but then Zach Phipps caught a touchdown pass from Zach Zabrowski. That's going to be a theme throughout this one. Emporia answers again. Hey, it's 21-14 Mules. No big deal. Marcellus Hawkins, though, runs it in from 22 yards out. That extends the lead to 28-14. And then Emporia State will answer again on a 29-yard touchdown pass. But it was a lot of Mules after that. Zach Phipps with a touchdown pass. Arkell Smith right there with a touchdown reception. Zion Perry, an 89-yard touchdown reception. After the score, it's 49-20 in favor of the Mules. Braden Gleason would run one in to cut it to a 49-27 lead for Central Missouri. But then the Mules would answer a few more times. Arkell Smith had a couple touchdowns, including that one there. And Marcellus Hawkins ends it later with a 37-yard run. Here's another Smith touchdown, this one from 86 yards. So at the end of the third quarter, it's Central Missouri 77, Emporia State 27, and that is the way the ball game would end, with the Mules victorious in that one. Before we talk about a little bit of the game, wanted to go ahead and congratulate a member of the Mules team. Zach Zabrowski was named the D2Football.com Player of the Week for his efforts in the game. He threw for over 600, had 8 touchdown passes. Ever since I started doing these podcasts for the MIAA, there's been a player named each week, so maybe I am the good luck charm for the players. Back to the Central game. It was an impressive offensive display, as we've seen a long time, from any team in the conference. I really can't think of the last one I've seen that was that impressive. That it was against a real quality team. Keeps the Mules playoffs hopes alive. We'll talk about that later. But it was a good win for them, and an emphatic win, and it was extremely impressive. Mules look like they will be a threat in the playoffs. We'll see how far that defense can take them. Let's also look at some other scores in the MIAA, and we'll also compare it to how I predicted they would do. So, as you said, Central Missouri beat Emporia 77-27. I thought it was going to be 42-35, so I was wrong in both accounts. Central Oklahoma, a 37-21 win. I predicted 40-13, so that's roughly the same. Missouri Southern wins big over Lincoln, 63-5. I had predicted a 27-13 win, much less conservative than I thought they would be in that game. I thought they would just want to get out of there without any injuries, but they really put it to Lincoln in that one. Pittsburgh State at Northwest was probably the second best game of the week last week. 28-7 win for the Gorillas. I picked a 27-21. If I'm going to play ifs and buts, Bearcats had a couple of possessions inside the 10-yard line, didn't fail to score. Could have made that game closer to the predicted score. Having said that, Pitt State missed a wide open touchdown pass on their first drive. And so they could have had 35 very, very, very easily. Missouri Western, a 38-21 win over Nebraska Kearney was my prediction. The actual score, though, was 20-17. And finally, Fort Hays with a 35-17 win. Excuse me, a 31-28 win over Washburn. Much closer than I thought it would be because I had predicted 35-17. Washburn, put up a fight in that one. Pretty good for them considering where they are on the season. So, but nonetheless, that's where the playoff, or that's where the what the results were last week in the MIAA. As I mentioned earlier, there are 10 teams that were released on Monday, and they weren't ranked; they were alphabetized. What's changed since our discussion about the rankings? I'm going to go ahead and pull those up. Now, I went ahead and sorted them differently. The NCAA alphabetized them. You saw that. I have sorted them according to the D2 wins and losses. If you look at the graphic, D2 is the number of the record in Division II, obviously. The next column is the region record, and that can be important. I don't know that it's the most important, but it can be important, and so it's included. Then the remaining three columns are the opponent in week 9, week 10, and week 11 to kind of see how we thought that would play out, or at least how I thought it would play out. At the beginning of the show, a few minutes ago, I asked, well, what has changed? And I don't know that much has changed. Everything has kind of played out the way I thought it would so far. So let's look at the remaining schedule. Pitt State this week has Sioux Falls. I think they'll win. I think they'll beat Missouri Western in week 10. And I think they'll beat UCO in week 11. I think they'll finish 11-0. They'll likely be the number 1 team, get a bye in the playoffs. We're looking at Harding, Southeastern Oklahoma on the slate, East Central left, and at Arkansas Tech. And I believe they're going to dominate all those games too. So they'll finish 11-0. So at the end of the year, at the end of the regular season, rather, we should have Pittsburgh State and Harding at both 11-0. Now, the next two teams both have 0 Division II losses. Davenport, 7-0. Excuse me, but you see they're only 5-0 in the region. But let's look just at their overall record. They have Saginaw Valley remaining, Ferris State remaining, and Grand Valley remaining. At the end of the year, they're going to be a 2 or 3 loss team. They will not be in this discussion, likely in the top 10, but not a real threat to make the playoffs. So again, so far we have Pittsburgh State, Harding, and that's it. Let's look at Indianapolis. They have Upper Iowa left. They also have McKendree and Southwest Baptist. They're going to win every one of those. Indianapolis will be an undefeated team after the regular season. They'll be at 10-0. So that is the third 10-0 team. Now, obviously, as you see, everybody else has a loss. They can't be undefeated. So we're going to have 3 undefeated teams if my predictions hold out at the end of the year. Let's look at the 1-loss teams now. Central Missouri has to play Missouri Southern. Not a gimme. Excuse me, but not an not a game that they should lose. So Fort Hays, much improved this year. A threat, certainly, but it's a home game. Central should win that one. And then they finish at Lincoln, where they will undoubtedly win, but their strength of schedule might take a little hit on that one. And the Mules are likely going to finish 10-1. So there is the first 1-loss team. So let me keep an accounting of this. We've got 3 3-loss teams and 1 1-loss team. What do we have after that? Ouachita Baptist, they're 7-1. Now, some people associated with the GAC think that it's not as easy a slate as I believe. Now, a week ago, I said that Ouachita Baptist would finish with 1 loss, and I was very, very sure of that. The people familiar with the GAC think that the games against Southern Nazarene, which are this week, and Henderson State, which is at the end of the week, that's one of the best rivalries of Division II, are not the gimmies that I said they were. So that could be a second loss for Ouachita Baptist. That would be beneficial to Central Missouri, Truman State, any of these 1-loss teams, if Ouachita were to pick up another loss. But for the purposes of what might be, we've got 3 zeros, and then so far we have, with 1 loss, we have 1, 2. Truman State, they're going to finish Southwest Baptist, Upper Iowa, and Missouri S&T. They're going to be a 1-loss team. So that is a third 1-loss team. Grand Valley has Michigan Tech. Now, Michigan Tech's not a pushover, but it is a game that Grand Valley should win. Then they'll play at Wayne State, and then they'll play Davenport. Miracle upset would be good for MIAA teams. Not likely to happen. Grand Valley will likely finish with 1 loss. And finally, Ferris State has 1 loss, and they play American International. That's going to kill their strength of schedule. I mean, it's not good as it is, but that makes it even worse. But they do finish with Davenport, which will help, and then Wayne State, which is mediocre. Not that great of a record, but it doesn't kill you totally. But Ferris State will be a 1-loss team, the 5th, if things go how I think they will. And that would mean that we have 3 undefeated teams, 5 1-loss teams for 8 teams for 1 spot. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out because, like I said, Ferris was playing American International. That could hurt their strength of schedule to a point where maybe they're fighting with, let's say, Truman State for that last spot. Having said that, one of these teams could lose, and one of the 1-loss teams could lose and make that much less interesting than it might be. And obviously, if you're Central Missouri, you're rooting for one of the 1-loss teams to lose. In fact, you're rooting for a lot of them to lose. But that is the way the regional rankings look right now. So nothing has essentially changed since last week. We're not going to create drama, create news where there's none, and nothing has changed. It's still looking like the track that we had predicted, or I had predicted a week ago. All right, we'll take a look at this week's games up next. Just wanted to take this opportunity to thank those who've supported D2 football this year. D2 football is free, but it isn't cheap. Your support helps offset our expenses and allows us to expand our coverage. If you like what we're doing, please consider supporting us. Visit d2football.com/support. Or if you want to do it the old-fashioned way, click contact on the website to find our mailing address. But again, thank you for supporting D2 football. Welcome back. Let's go ahead and take a look at this week's schedule in the MIAA. We'll start with Central Oklahoma at Fort Hays, which is kind of the best game of the week this week. To me, I looked at the Fort Hays defense, and they're doing a pretty good job this year. The max they've given up is 40 versus Pitt, and they've kind of taken advantage when they've played some rummies. That's for sure. But it's a defense that's doing a pretty good job. On the other hand, I would not say that UCO's offense is any kind of juggernaut this year. In fact, if you take out the games against Lincoln and Northeastern State, the max that they've scored was 30 against Missouri Southern. Now, back in the day, that might not have been a bad number, but today's football is a little different. And that just kind of shows a lack of explosion, a lack of potential by UCO. Now, in the Northwest Missouri game, the starting quarterback got hurt. So Dawson Hurl, who's a transfer from Missouri Southern, played. He did okay. And in the two games since then, but bear in mind they are Northeastern State and Lincoln. He's thrown 19 for 29 in one game, 19 for 28 in the other. Is pretty good. 258 in one, 358 in the other. That's not bad either. 5 touchdowns against Lincoln. That's nice. Without an interception, he had a 3-to-1 ratio against Northeastern State. Touchdowns to interceptions. The Fort Hays offense, it can get some things done. I kind of mentioned that earlier. Jack Dawson completing 65%. That's a real good number. Even in today's football, that's a pretty good number. Completion percentage is a lot higher, but 65 is really dang good. Averaging 248 a game. That's a winning number in terms of having a successful football season. Where they might have an issue, though, or where Jack might have the issue, 19-9 touchdown interception ratio. That's not good. You got to clean that up. Obviously they're not in the playoff race now, but most of my thinking is always done in terms of how does this compare nationally? Where does this put them in a chance to make a deep playoff run? And it's hard for me to kind of dial that back a little bit and just talk about a conference race or standings for the conference. But those are pretty good numbers by him. One thing though, they're kind of average at protecting the quarterback, giving up a lot of sacks this year, a lot of negative plays. Obviously, a lot of interceptions, a lot of negative plays. Might be the difference in an even better season for Fort Hays this year. So I'm going to predict a close game. Fort Hays controls it, and then it controls at the end and kind of extends the score. We'll say I'm predicting 32 to 17. All right, so what's next? Northeastern State at Missouri Western. One of the things that I pride myself in an organization is not creating drama where there is none, or not lying to you when there's something that, when sometimes that would benefit us in terms of excitement about something. There's nothing to be excited about in this game. Northeastern State has not been a good program for a while. And, they haven't provided any resistance. And especially, Missouri Western hasn't been stopped. So what I see on this one is a big Missouri Western win, 52-14. I predicted them not to score like they did against Washburn, and they absolutely destroyed the Ichabod's. We'll see if they duplicate that against Northeastern State. Northwest Missouri is at Washburn. That a game that could not have come at a better time for the Bearcats. They can rebound from the loss to Pitt. Washburn will try. This is what I think. Washburn is going to try to get the ball out quickly. They've done that against Northwest in the past. I think it makes sense because they've got young quarterbacks and they want to get it out before Northwest pass rush can get home. I actually think that's going to result in more Northwest possessions and more points than Northwest might normally score because the incompletions will stop the clock. And I think the Bearcats will win this one 35-13, which if you know anything about that rivalry or that matchup, you know that those games are usually good between the two. What we got next? Nebraska Kearney at Emporia State. And I think the most important thing or the most interesting thing to watch on this one will be what question is answered about Emporia State. How will they respond after being eliminated from the playoffs? Maybe they don't know that they were. Maybe they're still being told in the program that they have a chance, but it would take just so many unlikely scenarios for Emporia State to still make it. So they're playing for pride. They had extremely slim chance before the Central game. They really have no chance now. It's been a season of highs. Started out with some highs for Emporia, and now some lows. And it will be interesting to see how Garrett Higgins steers that team. You know, UNK season though has been mostly lows. Kind of a disappointing season for them, to be honest with you, especially in TJ Davis's senior year. I think that there's nothing that changes this week. Emporia State, even after the hangover, after the disappointment of the Central Missouri loss, wins 38-21 over UNK. That's what I'll pick there. All right, let's scroll down. Central Missouri is at Missouri Southern. It's another good game. I kind of touched on it earlier. I think it's a quality matchup. Obviously, the focus is going to be the MIAA offense, which it probably will be in every game it plays this year, against the Southern defense, which has been pretty good. Mules are scoring 50 points a game. Excuse me. The Lions are only allowing 21, which is not bad in this era of football. I think Missouri Southern should try to shorten the game. If I were them, I wouldn't snap the ball outside of, until it's inside of 5 seconds on the play clock every time. Try to get the Mules offense out of rhythm. Try to move the ball, score some points when they can. Try to keep it close, have a chance to win at the end. But I think the Mules are simply too good this year. That's the neat thing to me about college football is that it's unlike the NFL, where sometimes teams are simply just way better than the others, and they just exert their will. I think that's what the Mules offense will do, 42-31 in that game. Central over the Lions. And then finally, Sioux Falls at Pittsburgh State. Would not be a very interesting game at all. Sioux Falls is, has coach turnover. They lost some impact players to the portal. I mean, guys that went to, FBS programs, Washington, some impact D linemen, the kind that everybody would want to have. They lost some players, and it's been a down year for them. But it is a non-conference game. The first one, I believe, since 2013. And I think that's very interesting. I'm going to predict, though, a 45-10 win for the Gorillas over Sioux Falls. They're the Cougars. You might hear them say "Coup" because that's what they call themselves, the Coup. And they're very nice people. I was up there earlier this year. So Pitt folks, please treat them well because they are good folks. I kind of went down the rabbit hole. I want to share this with you now. I kind of went down the rabbit hole looking at how many non-conference games that there had been between 2014 and today. And what would be my non-conference games are games not in the regular season, but just simply games that an MIAA program played against a non-MIAA program. They all obviously would have been in the postseason. If you look at the graphic that I have up, Central Missouri, spelled incorrectly, but still Central Missouri, a total of 5 games in 10 years against non-conference games. Central Oklahoma, by the way, the graphic is playoff games and bowl games. So Central Oklahoma has 0 playoff games, 4 bowl games for a total of 4, as you see. Emporia State, 3 playoff games, 3 bowl games, total 6. They had a pretty good run in 15 in the playoffs. Fort Hays, 2 playoff games, 2 bowl games. Couldn't get that playoff win. Missouri Southern, their program has not faced a non-MIAA team since 2013. And I have to believe that they will be excited to participate in a schedule in the MIAA that does not only include MIAA teams. A chance to go outside the conference would be great for them. Missouri Western, no playoffs in that time, 2 bowl games though. Nebraska Kearney played 2 playoff games, 1 bowl game, total of 3. Northeastern State, another program that could desperately use non-conference games. They haven't played a non-MIAA team in the last 10 years. Northwest Missouri, you see 18 playoff games, 0 bowl games. They're a team that's obviously gotten to see a lot because they've had some success in the playoffs. Pittsburgh State, 5 playoff games, 1 bowl game for a total of 6. And Washburn, 1 playoff game and 2 bowl games for a total of 3. So I was just curious about that because I think the bowl games, if anybody's watched Inside D2 Football or knows my opinion about things, you know that I highly value the non-conference games. I think they're very interesting. I think, because my perspective is national. It's a way to judge things nationally. And so I just love it when they happen. Wish I could be in Pittsburgh to see this one, even though the Gorillas are going to come out on top and probably will do so. MIAA Weekly is a production of D2Football.com. We want to invite you to join us every Sunday night at 7 for an inside look at Division II football on our show, Inside D2 Football. You can visit the homepage of D2Football.com every Sunday for the link. I'm Brandon Meisner. Thank you very much for watching MIAA Weekly.